Peony Secrets, my top tips for growing and propagating lush and beautiful peonies. Hello, dear friends of earthly delights. If you've ever found yourself lingering a little longer in front of a blooming flower, if you've ever whispered to a bud and hoped it heard you, then you're in the right place. Today we're uncovering the soulful secrets of one of the garden's most beloved divas, the peony. Maybe you're someone with a tiny balcony and big dreams. Or perhaps you're nurturing a backyard haven, hoping to turn a patch of soil into a sanctuary. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned grower, you've likely faced slow-growing plants, disappointing blooms, or just the mystery of why won't it flower this year. Don't worry, this video isn't just tips. It's a story, a journey from root to radiance. And if you stay with me, you'll learn how to grow lush, breathtaking peonies, no matter the size of your space. So if you love nature, patience, and a touch of magic, hit that subscribe button now, because Earthly Delights is where your green heart belongs. 1. The first 3 years. Patience before the show. Here's the truth that most beginner gardeners don't hear enough. Peonies don't rush for anyone. In their first 3 years, they aren't being lazy. They're building something powerful underground. You might plant that tiny budget peony root from the garden center and spend the next 2 springs wondering if it even survived. But trust me, it did. It's just dreaming big beneath the soil. In those early years, peonies are busy crafting a deep root system, anchoring themselves with quiet strength. They're not trying to impress you with blooms yet. They're preparing. And if you interfere too soon, if you cut the stems, divide the roots, or move them around, you interrupt that sacred preparation. It's like asking a child to sing before they found their voice. That's why the most beautiful peonies, those lush, full blooms that stop you in your tracks, often come from plants that were simply left alone, watered, loved, but unbothered. So if you've planted your first peony this year, take a deep breath. You've started a story that rewards patience. Let it grow quietly, and one day it will astonish you. 2. Sunshine and space. Peonies need the spotlight. Peonies aren't shy, even if they take their time. When they're finally ready to bloom, they want the stage all to themselves. These plants don't thrive in the shadows. They crave the spotlight. Place them somewhere too shaded or hemmed in by larger shrubs, and you'll notice something strange. The leaves may flourish, wide and lush, but not a single flower will appear. That's what gardeners call a blind peony. All show, no bloom. And it's not just sunlight they need, it's space. Peonies are much like roses in that way. Crowding them with other hungry plants steals their airflow and their strength. Too close to competing roots, and your peony will fall silent. Give them breathing room, and they'll respond with buds like tightly wrapped secrets, ready to unfurl into silk. Think of your peony as the main act in your garden orchestra, not a backup dancer, not part of the chorus. If you want flowers that steal your breath, give them the room and light to shine. Let them feel the sun on their petals and the wind at their stems, and they'll reward you with a bloom that feels like poetry. 3. Container magic. Yes, it's possible, but... Now, if you're one of the many garden lovers tending to a tiny patio or a sunny windowsill, you might be wondering, can peonies really thrive in containers? The answer is yes, but with a little extra care and understanding. Growing a peony in a pot is like raising a wild spirit in a small room. It can work, but only if you make the space feel like home. Start with a container that's deep and wide, something that gives those thick, determined roots enough room to stretch. Choose a breathable material and make sure it drains well. Without proper drainage, moisture builds up and the crown, the heart of the plant, can begin to rot beneath the surface without you even knowing. And here's something I've learned the hard way. In pots, peonies are more vulnerable to being buried too deeply over time. Fallen leaves, extra compost, self-seeding plants, they all add layer upon layer until the crown is smothered. When that happens, the plant may look green and healthy, but the buds disappear. That's its quiet cry for help. So if you're growing in a container, visit your peony often. Check the soil, scrape back debris, lift its crown closer to the light if needed. Think of it as a conversation between you and the plant. In return, even on the smallest balcony, it may just surprise you with a bloom that feels impossibly grand. 4. Water wisdom, quenching the quiet thirst. Watering a peony isn't just about hydration, it's about timing, memory, and intention. These plants don't like to shout for attention. They won't wilt dramatically like a thirsty hydrangea. Instead, they whisper. A slower growth, fewer buds, leaves that look fine but feel tired. If you wait until they look parched, you've waited too long. Peonies especially need water as they wake from dormancy in early spring. That's when the buds are forming beneath the soil, long before you see signs above ground. Dry spells during this time can quietly rob you of an entire season of blooms. So make watering a gentle ritual, regular, deep, and unhurried. And if you're using tap water, give it a moment. Let it sit overnight so the chlorine and harsh minerals have time to fade. Better yet, collect rainwater. It's what peonies remember from nature, soft, clean, and nourishing. In containers, this is even more vital. Without the buffer of deep soil, your plant relies entirely on what you give it. Water your peonies like you're filling a well of potential. Not too much, not too little. Enough to let the roots know they're seen, supported. In return, they'll draw from that memory when it's time to bloom, and they won't hold back. 5. Planting position and soil depth, the invisible mistake. There's a secret that even experienced gardeners overlook, and it lives just beneath the surface. It's not about sunlight or water this time, but something more hidden, the depth of your planting. With peonies, just a few centimeters too deep can mean the difference between a lush bloom and a leafy disappointment. The crown, the knobby, fleshy part where roots meet shoots, needs to sit close to the surface. So close, in fact, that you should be able to brush away the topsoil and feel it with your fingertip. If it's buried under layers of compost, mulch, or fallen leaves, the peony may grow, but it will come up blind. No buds, no blooms. Just a plant trying to breathe through too much earth. It often happens gradually. You top-dress the soil, enrich the border, or let the garden's natural decay build up. Over time, that once perfect crown disappears beneath the surface, and one year, just like that, the flowers stop. But the good news? It's fixable. Each fall or early spring, take a moment to check in. Gently clear the top layer, let the crown see the light again. Your peony will feel it and respond. Because sometimes growth isn't about adding more. It's about uncovering what was already there, waiting to bloom. 6. Propagation truths. What actually works? Everyone loves the idea of multiplying beauty. One glorious peony turns into 2, then 4, then a whole row of ruffled dreams. But when it comes to propagation, peonies are not easily rushed or fooled. The internet is full of shortcuts and hacks, but these plants honor tradition. And the truth? Seeds and stem cuttings may tempt you, but they rarely deliver what you're hoping for. Peonies grown from seed often don't resemble the parent plant. That's because most are hybrids, their genetics swirling into unpredictable outcomes. You might get a flower, sure, but not that flower. And stem cuttings? Peonies have woody, stubborn stems that resist rooting. More often than not, they simply rot before they ever root. So what works? Division. Slow, steady, rooted in timing. In autumn, once the foliage fades and the plant begins its quiet retreat, that's your moment. Dig up the full root, and with a sharp, clean tool, divide it carefully. Each division should carry at least 3 to 5 eyes, those little red or pink bumps where new growth will emerge. But don't divide too early in the plant's life. Let it mature, let it settle. Give it 3 full years of undisturbed living first. Rushing this process only restarts the clock. And beauty, as we've learned, does not bloom on demand. 7. Border versus container. When to transplant. There comes a moment in every gardener's journey when you look at a plant and realize it's outgrown its home. That once spacious container now feels like a tight jacket on your peony. The leaves are reaching, the blooms are fewer, and the soil seems to dry out quicker than before. This isn't failure, it's a sign of growth, and it's time to listen. Peonies, though they can begin in pots, eventually crave the depth and freedom of open ground. Their roots want to stretch deep and wide to claim their space beneath the earth without walls holding them back. But transplanting is delicate. It's not just a shift in soil, it's a shift in rhythm. The best time to move a container-grown peony into the border is in the fall, when the plant is winding down and retreating into rest. Let it go to sleep in one home and wake up in another. And when you transplant, do it gently. Don't shake off all the old soil. Let some of it stay. It carries memory, microbes, a familiar scent, a sense of continuity. Once settled into the border, your peony might take a season or two to adjust. That's okay. Like anyone leaving a small apartment for open land, it needs time to stretch, explore, and remember how to thrive. 8. Cut flower perfection. The art of the harvest. There's something sacred about bringing a peony bloom indoors. That moment when you cradle it in your hands, still tight in bud, knowing that in just a day or two it will unfurl like silk in warm water. It feels like carrying a secret. But timing is everything. Harvest too early, and the flower never opens. Wait too long, and the petals fall before you've even had the chance to admire them. The sweet spot? It's when the bud is soft like a marshmallow, with a hint of color peeking through the green. Not a tight ball, not fully open, just squishy enough to whisper that the magic has already begun inside. That's the stage when your peony is willing to bloom indoors, giving you days, sometimes a full week of beauty. But here's the trick many don't know. You can actually store those perfect buds in the fridge. Dry, wrapped gently in newspaper, without water. For up to 6 weeks, they'll rest like slumbering treasures. And when you're ready, a vase of fresh water and the warmth of home will wake them. This isn't just about cut flowers, it's about extending joy, about turning a brief season into something longer, more generous. Like all things in the garden, it's a quiet miracle. You just have to know when to reach for it. 9. Your peony calendar, month-by-month tips. Gardening with peonies is a relationship, seasonal, evolving, intimate. Each month carries its own rhythm, its own small tasks that, when honored, lead to that unforgettable bloom. Think of this as your quiet guide through the year, a calendar written in petals and patience. In autumn, when the last leaf drops, it's time for letting go. Cut back the stems, tidy the bed, and if needed, divide the roots. This is also the perfect season to plant new peonies, while the earth is still warm, but the plant is ready to rest. In winter, the garden sleeps, but you can still serve. Add mulch around the base, especially in colder zones, to protect those dreamy crowns from frost. It's a season of watching and waiting. Come spring, the world stirs, and so does your peony. This is when watering matters most. Check the crown, scrape away any buildup, and let the sun meet the new buds. Feed the soil lightly, watch closely, it's all happening. And by summer, it's celebration time. Stake tall stems if they need support, deadhead gently, but mostly admire. This is the reward. This is the moment you've been gardening toward. Each month, you're not just growing a plant, you're keeping a promise to beauty, to consistency, to yourself. 10. Real peony problems and real fixes. Even the most breathtaking flowers have their bad days, and peonies, for all their elegance, can sometimes confuse and frustrate even the most patient gardener. But here's the comforting truth. Most problems have gentle, manageable fixes, if you know how to listen. Yellowing leaves mid-season? It might be too much water or poor drainage. Peonies hate wet feet. If they're sitting in soggy soil, their roots can't breathe. Try easing up on watering, or check if the soil needs to be loosened or amended. Not seeing blooms at all? Revisit the basics: sunlight, spacing, and that all-important crown depth. Often it's just a matter of light not reaching the buds, or the crown being buried too deep under compost and debris. Powdery mildew or leaf blotches? These are signs that air isn't flowing freely. Trim back surrounding plants, give your peony room to breathe. Think of it like clearing a fog from a mirror. Suddenly, the beauty shines through. And if bugs are nibbling, a gentle spray of neem oil or soapy water can often be enough. Peonies are tough, but like all living things, they flourish best with protection and presence. Remember, every plant problem is a message, not a failure. And every solution brings you closer to understanding the living world you're part of, from roots to radiance. And now here we are, at the end of the video, but truly just the beginning of your peony journey. Because once you understand them, once you see how they ask for patience, light, and a bit of faith, something shifts. You stop rushing the bloom, you begin to honor the wait, and that changes how you care for everything in your garden. Maybe even how you care for yourself. Peonies teach us that beauty isn't always instant, that roots matter more than appearances, that the most stunning things often take years to become themselves, and when they do, oh, how effortlessly they shine. So whether you're tending a single pot on a balcony or planting a full border in your backyard, know this: You're doing more than growing flowers. You're growing rhythm, trust, resilience. And that, my friend, is what Earthly Delights is all about. If this story stirred something in you, if you felt seen in the struggles or inspired by the small victories, then don't leave without subscribing. Join our garden-loving family, share this with a fellow plant dreamer, and drop a comment below telling me, what's your favorite peony color? Until next time, keep your hands in the soil and your heart in the bloom.